Do you have a fear of missing out on Samsung's next latest and greatest generation of TVs? You've heard about QD-OLED, and I mentioned QNED before. Today, we'll have an update on QNED. Specifically, well, how good is it expected to be? Where's it in the spectrum of QD-OLED, micro LED, and when is it coming? So, let's climb up Jack's tree and discover some giants on today's Coffee Break.
I'd like to know how you dealt with it. You know, we're going to rise above this.
QD-OLED, QNED. These are all of Samsung's next generation technology to follow QLED. And they're coming sooner than you expect. QD-OLED is expected in 2021. And surprisingly enough, QNED right after 2022. Let's talk about this QD-LED, QD-OLED, QD-NED, QNED, right? So let's talk about these new technologies that not a lot of people have spent a lot of time on, well, except me, but let's jump right into it. We'll start with the next generation QD-OLED, which is supposed to be better than LG's WOLED technology, right? QD-OLED. QD, first of all, quantum dot. We spoke to Jason Hartlove at Nanosys, and QD-OLED really is the next generation of quantum dot technology. Quick summary, currently quantum dots is in the light panel, a quantum dot enhancement film. Now to get full BT 2020 color space, the color filter must be improved, and quantum dot color filters promise that improvement. So when you bring the quantum dot from the enhancement film layer, where it's in the backlight, and move it to the front, where it's closer to your eyes, lots of benefits. The biggest benefit is, of course, wider viewing angle, closer to black, deep, darker blacks, better black detail, better shadow detail, wide viewing angle, about as good as OLED, so the promises are. That's the quantum dot as a color filter, and that's what quantum dot or QD-OLED is. They make OLED into a blue light emitting layer so that when the blue light hits the quantum dot color filter, the color filter converts all that blue light into all the colors necessary for a full color space, right? So the benefits are this. We talked about having the quantum dot color filter, more colors, brighter colors, great colors. It's just a better OLED technology, or Samsung believes next generation OLED technology, because dedicating blue OLEDs to be brighter, supposed to deal with burn-in a little bit better, right? Now, it's still OLED, and that's the issue, is OLED still has the limit to how bright it can get, and ultimately it does have a shorter lifespan than inorganic materials. Now comes QNED. So QNED similarly uses that quantum dot color filter, but the emitting light layer is not OLED. It is, let's see, NED stands for nano emitting diode, right? It's a type of LED, so to speak, except it uses gallium nitride, or GaN, and that is being used popularly in amps right now. It's the next generation of Class B amps, but for TVs, it is the next generation of light emission, specifically blue light emitter that's inorganic. It is not an OLED type emitter. It's going to last a lot longer, it gets a lot brighter, and it's more stable. So it doesn't require a special encapsulation. OLED emitters, because it's very sensitive to oxygen and the environment, requires an encapsulation stage that protects it from the environment. That makes OLED more expensive. QNED, because it's inorganic, does not require that protection, that encapsulation stage, right? Removing that one stage, an expensive stage actually, will make this technology cheaper and more accessible ultimately to the consumer. All good news so far. Obviously, everything is inferior. Now, here's the most important part. Samsung has gotten close enough progress in its R&D on QNED to make public where they are. So let's talk about timelines. QD-OLED is still believed to be released sometime in 2021, next year, maybe later in the year, maybe CES, but for sure, sometime next year, we should have an announcement, even a launch of QD-OLED. Here is the surprise. Right after that, likely in 2022, and I've linked all of my sources below so you guys can look into it a little bit deeper, but the suggestion is within a year or two after QD-OLED, it will be QNED. And this is what surprises me. QNED is clearly the superior technology based on the physics and the technology that I've understood. And so here's my issue with this product pipeline that's being announced. You're going to spend all this money developing QD-OLED, but it's only going to be for sale for 2 years. And then in the third year, it's QNED. 2 years of sales of a premium flagship product is not enough to recoup the development and tooling costs to get QD-OLED to market. It doesn't make sense. What I believe is probably going to happen is QD-OLED will be displayed as a demo, get people excited at CES, but I believe that Samsung will actually launch QNED as the true successor to their QLED. And QD-OLED is like a red herring, right? It's something for us to talk about, get excited about, but the reality is, on a market, business, product roadmap, it doesn't make sense. You don't spend so much money developing a technology only to put it into pasture 2 years later. That is not enough time to recoup, get a return on investment on that technology. And let's face it, OLED is difficult to work with. It's expensive to produce. You have to tool for it. I suspect they're doing QNED and QD-OLED concurrently because they're overcoming the same problems that are common to both. It's actually the quantum dot color filter or color conversion layer. That layer is not easy. If you solve for the quantum dot color conversion layer in front, it solves for both QNED and QD-OLED at the same time. You get that right. Whether you go with OLED or the gallium nitride light emission, you have this solved. And I think they're focusing on solving this concurrently with getting the OLED blue emitter stable. The gallium nitride emitter is already stable. They're just trying to get the cost down and to see what would it take to go to a mass production level. Now, big picture, this is Samsung Display working on all of this. Samsung Electronics is still committed to QLED for now. And until Samsung Display demonstrates a affordable, market-ready technology for Samsung Electronics to buy, whether it's QD-OLED or QNED, Samsung Electronics will continue to sell QLED. And it appears that it's actually pretty good, maybe to last another year to 2 while they wait for QNED. Now, does this mean that Samsung Electronics will be stagnant until the arrival of QD-OLED or QNED? And the answer is yes. All Samsung has is QLED, and they've already announced the shutdown of any continuing R&D on LCD or QLED. So what we see this year in their 8K flagships most likely will carry over into next year and the year after, because they've pretty much stopped any further R&D. This is probably the end of the line for that technology, but it's pretty good. LG has the same problem. They've hit the peak of their OLED technology, oh my goodness, since the C9 generation, right? Even arguably C8. C8, C9, C10, all very good. And next year, C11, still very good, but very similar because they're at that peak. QLED appears to be there now as well. This year's 950, 900 TS pushed the envelope, the limits of QLED. How much farther would have required more R&D, which Samsung has stopped and focused their R&D on QNED or QD-OLED. Now, what does this mean for consumers as far as buying plans are concerned? We'll start with the OLED buyers, right? Because this performance matches OLED performance in terms of black levels, wide viewing angle, with a bump up in brightness and color depth, color volume, color space. Okay, If you bought an OLED in the last 3 years, 2018 moving forward, you're set, you're okay. It will take a while for QNED, QNED with a gallium nitride to come down in price and be price competitive with what you paid for way back when, or this year. It's not going to be $3,000 anytime soon, like all flagship. When it is released in 2022, $5,000, $6,000. That's pretty expensive. Waiting for it to come to $3,000, probably 2 years out, right? So we're talking 2024, 2024. By 2024, 2023, QNED will be what OLED was last year. Okay, so that's a few years off and your OLED will last that long. Don't worry about it. For everyone else who are in the $1,000 to $2,000 range or under $1,000, it will be at least 5 to 6, maybe 7 years before that technology trickles down. But there's always the wild card, and that's called the Chinese manufacturing industrial complex. If TCL, Hisense, BOE, if they can get a handle on the quantum dot color filter, plus whatever lighting technology, backlighting technology they want to use, and it doesn't have to be the NED lighting technology, it could be LCD. If the Chinese can get the color conversion filter right with just plain old LCD, this is the game changer that will compete with QNED. So if the Chinese can get the color conversion filter matched to an LCD to market a lot quicker, then QNED can become affordable. This is the true threat for Samsung and LG and the rest of the premium players, because the picture quality improvement comes from the quantum dot color conversion filter. And the lighting doesn't have to be that QNED, the NED, right? It doesn't have to be the gallium nitride layer. It could be LCD. But what do you guys think? Where would your preferences be? Would you rather pay for Samsung's implementation, which is probably going to be more polished, thinner, and using more exotic materials? Or are you willing to go with the Chinese brute force method, which I always like to use, get the cheapest technology out there, but make it perform to its utmost, right? Nothing exotic, you just take what you have and you drive it to the limits of its performance. Yeah, it's a little bit thicker, but you know what? It's like the Millennium Falcon, right? You do what you can to cobble together and wrench the hell out of it to make it perform beyond what it's supposed to. I don't know, I think it's great. So anyway, until next time, stop the FOMO.